Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Will Osborne,
And I'm Ryan Connelly.
and we are talking about the basics of self-directed IRAs today.
Hop right into it.
Yeah, let's go into it. Why don't you start us off and give us a little intro if you don't mind?
Perfect. Yeah, so I'll just start by saying, what is a self-directed IRA? And really what it is, it's a retirement account that allows you to invest into things called, we consider alternative assets in essence. So pretty much anything besides the standard Wall Street products, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And we're the custodian that basically helps you manage that account and in essence holds the tax advantage of the account as well.
Exactly. At the end of the day, this is an IRA like you'd find anywhere else. The difference is really administrative. We have the ability to hold alternative assets in the account. Whereas with a standard IRA, as you can see on the slide, or maybe a conventional IRA, if you want to put it that way, you're limited to publicly traded securities. For some people, that's completely fine. For others, it makes more sense to diversify, open up a self-directed IRA. We'll get into more details in a bit, but at a high level, that's what the self-directed IRA is for, going beyond Wall Street in your retirement account. So we are a self-directed IRA custodian. So that means we, again, as I mentioned, have the ability to hold these alternative assets. We're making sure that the investment is held, custodied by us, titled properly. What are some other things that we do as custodian?
Basically, yeah, keeping the tax advantage, help you transfer the funds over from other custodians, helping you administer the investment, helping out with the documentation for maybe it's like a private placement or a promissory note, just ensuring that all the titling's, done correctly.
Exactly. We're processing transactions, as Ryan said. We're placing investments. We're helping people roll funds in, transfer funds in, make contributions. And on top of that, it's our role to make sure that every one of our clients is following all the appropriate IRS regulations surrounding IRAs. So in that sense, we're maintaining the tax advantage status of the account as well, maintaining all the records necessary for the investments, for all the transactions. So we're just making sure everything is in good standing, and we're that neutral third party to make sure all the rules are being followed, basically.
Absolutely.
Um, let's see. Just wanted to see if there's anything else we're missing there on that slide. No, I think
I
we're
think we covered
good.
it there, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into the asset types in a bit. I know we have them listed there, but let's keep going here. All right, here we go. So yeah, start us
I'll lead
off.
us off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what can you invest in within the self-directed IRA? So really the options are, pretty open. So I'd say the most popular is real estate. Precious metals is an option, private placement deals, whether that's real estate syndications or just potentially a tech company, promissory notes, startups, crowdfunding, cryptocurrency, et cetera. Then the list goes on. It's really, pretty much open in regard to what you can invest in within the self-directed IRA.
Right. We could go on
Go
all
on
day. Each of
for
us have
days. Yeah.
seen so many different asset types during our time here. We've been here for years, and we've seen virtually it all. But you're right. I mean, real estate, I'm sure you've seen this, is by
Yeah.
far the most popular.
Absolutely.
70% of the time I talk to people, it's about some sort of real estate investment, whether it's actually buying a property through the IRA or through an LLC. We'll touch on the LLC option later on.
Sure.
Or getting into something more passive like a real estate syndication deal. We work with sponsors all the time who refer clients over to invest in those sort of opportunities, and clients bring them to us as well. So the options are nearly limitless, whether it's in real estate or not. There are some exceptions here, so we can't hold everything. Some of that is our restrictions. Some of that is per the IRS. So collectibles are going to be off limits. Anything that derives its value from age or uniqueness, that is going to be a no-go in the IRA. Same for life insurance, and same for S corporation stock. C corporation stock is fine. LLC, any other entity type is
Partnerships.
okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's more of an S corporation thing than an IRA thing. I guess you can see it both ways, but basically trusts can't be shareholders in an S corp, and IRAs are technically trusts. So that's the logic there. And at least for Madison, we don't hold anything, or let me put it this way, we don't hold foreign investments directly. It is possible with a checkbook IRA,
Exactly.
but just keep that in mind. There might be other custodians that hold foreign investments directly. We just don't, keep things simple on our end. So yeah, a little bit about what you can and can't invest in. We might get into a little bit more as we go in
Absolutely.
here.
So yeah, what are the benefits and considerations for investing within the self-directed IRA? You're able to diversify your portfolio. So a lot of people before they hear about the self-directed IRA, they're just not familiar with the concept. So they've always had these standard Wall Street stocks, bonds, mutual funds. This kind of gives you that chance to be able to invest And even if you're maybe not liquid personally, you could invest into maybe your friend's deal, within your IRA funds, or if you have an old 401k somewhere that you can roll over. So just kind of gives you that more flexibility, and you're more hands-on in this case. You have more control. Maybe real estate is kind of your forte. This kind of gives you that outlet and vehicle to be able to invest that, rather than if you're not as familiar with stocks, bonds, mutual funds.
Exactly. Play to your strengths. If you're familiar with real estate, go for it. Invest in literally buy a property with the IRA, or you have the knowledge base to do the proper due diligence for, real estate syndication, as I mentioned. So that would be a great candidate for an account like this. And that's a really good point. Having untapped funds in a retirement account,
Yeah.
you could deploy to an opportunity that wouldn't be available otherwise. Maybe you don't personally have enough funds liquid to make that investment. Tap into your IRA. If it makes sense, we can absolutely help you transfer funds over from an existing IRA, maybe an old 401k as well, to make that investment. And then with us, it's a pretty simple process. And some other things to consider. We are a passive custodian. So we're not a fiduciary. We're not providing any advice, tax, financial, or legal advice, none of that. So it is up to the client to do their own due diligence to make sure they, can accept the risk of any potential investment they have in mind. We are making sure we can hold the investment, first of all, administratively feasible, excuse me, and making sure there would be no prohibited transaction taking place as a result of making that investment. And we do have a great webinar on our replays page talking about prohibited transactions. But that's really all we're doing, making sure we can hold it, making sure it's legal from an IRS perspective. And that goes to that point down there, potential fraud. So for that reason, the clients do need to be very cognizant of the fact that they need to be the ones doing the due diligence, and they need to make sure they're comfortable with the investment before they bring it to us. And lastly, fees, that's another consideration. We charge flat fees here. So the fees are not based on the value of the account, just the number of investments. So it starts at 110 per quarter, and our fee schedule is publicly available online. Other custodians are different. The fees, the recurring fees, are based on the overall value of the account. So again, flat fees with us. Other custodians might have a different structure.
And one thing I'll add there is basically, I'd say just in general, when doing your due diligence, have a CPA, have a tax attorney kind of in your corner when deciding on these investments. If you're not sure, if you just want a second opinion, always helpful to have them in your corner because we're passive.
Thank you for mentioning that. Totally
Of course.
forgot. All right. Yeah, some myths. So yeah, start us off there, if you don't mind.
Perfect. Yeah. So first myth we got here is self-directed IRAs are illegal according to the IRS and can be considered a scam. So they're legal. They've been around a long time, believe it or not. A lot of people aren't aware. So since 1974, as part of the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. Regulated by state and federal law and compliant with the IRS rules and regulations. And we're regulated with the South Dakota Division of Banking here. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, technically, self-directed IRAs have been a thing since the beginning, since 75, when this became available. It's just a matter of who's willing to hold those alternative assets. And I assume, I've been in the industry for, roughly 4 years now, that they just were, few and far between for a while. Definitely becoming more mainstream as time goes on. But that's really all it is. It's really, is anyone willing to hold an alternative asset in the IRA? And we are. We're one of the many options out there these days. Next, self-directed IRAs do not need a custodian. So that is absolutely a myth. I can see where some people are coming from with that, and I'll get into that in a moment. But per the Internal Revenue Code, every IRA needs a custodian, whether it's self-directed or not, for all the reasons we outlined earlier. As a trust company regulated by the South Dakota Division of Banking, we're qualified to hold IRAs and act as a custodian. There is a checkbook IRA option where a client has a specialized LLC or trust that's held by the IRA. That entity has its own checking account, and we move the IRA funds to that checking account. And the client places investments on their own without getting Madison involved. Without that structure in place, without that LLC or trust, Madison would be reviewing investments and processing those transactions. But with the LLC, it's a bit different, at least in terms of investments. So the custodian is still required in that case because the owner is the IRA. So the IRA's only asset is that LLC or trust, even though the investing is happening at the entity level. So I hope I'm making sense there. But I can see where someone might think, oh, actually, I don't need a custodian because I have checkbook control. Right. But in reality, it's not the case.
Right. Exactly. And that's the custodian comes into play, keeping that tax advantage of the IRA,
Exactly.
and the IRA is the owner of that LLC.
Yeah, any taxable or reportable transactions, that's going to flow through Madison or the custodian that you end up using. Whereas any investments with the checkbook control model, yeah, that's on the client to take care of.
Right. And then this last myth we'll jump into here. You cannot contribute into more than one retirement account at a time. So you can absolutely contribute to more than one, whether that's a self-directed IRA or a 401k. So you do have that same tax advantage in both cases. So yeah, possibility either way.
Yeah, and you can talk to your CPA about this, but if you have a 401k, like an employer-sponsored retirement plan and an IRA, your contributions to the IRA may or may not be tax deductible. Just, one thing to consider, but doesn't mean you can't contribute to both. So just keep that in mind.
Exactly. So yeah, we'll jump into how to set up a self-directed IRA with Madison Trust. So figure the process is about 3 steps in general. First step is just getting the account open. It's an online application. Takes about 15 minutes. That basically just starts the process, gets you onboarded. We require things like a photo ID, beneficiary for the account, things of that nature. So that's basically just the first step in the process. Within 1 to 2 days, you're generally approved. Then your second step is funding. So that comes generally. Most common is IRA transfers. So transfers from other IRAs, whether you have it at Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard. The second most common is a 401k or another employee-sponsored plan like a 403b, maybe even a 457. So that's the second option. So doing that is basically contacting the administrator for the 401k, giving them our instructions for delivery, and then they'll send the funds as us, most likely via check.
Right, 100%.
Right. And then basically, the third is a contribution. So that's done, yearly, like we were just alluding to before, 7,000 for 2025. Just keep that in mind. So you can do that, every year if you'd like. And then the third is basically making the investment. In essence, so we basically take a look at the investment documents, whether it's real estate, maybe like purchase contract, settlement statement, draft of the deed. If it's a private deal, formation documents, subscription docs, operating agreement, things of that nature. We basically take a look, make sure everything's compliant, like we alluded to before, just a little. And then ultimately you instruct us to send the funds out with our investment authorization form.
Right, exactly. And I'd say if a client's bringing us a private placement or some sort of, private deal in general, that's going to normally take about 2 weeks from opening the account to placing the investment. That might even be conservative. I've seen it done pretty quickly. 8 days is the quickest we can do it.
Absolutely.
Just for admin and, IRS reasons. But it can be pretty quick. For real estate, 2 to 3 weeks is probably a little bit more fair, just, for the review process, and some of the other steps that are involved in that sort of transaction. And just one thing on the 401k, I may have missed this, you may have said this, but just in case, the 401k or any employer-sponsored plan, if it's with a previous employer, those funds can be moved over to an IRA, no problem, whether it's self-directed or not. If it's a 401k or other plan with your current employer, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be locked in, at least for now. Except other than if you are 59 and a half or older. If you're still with the company, but you're at that age or higher, or older rather, then chances are you can move the funds over. So keep that in mind in case, this is something that piques your interest. But yeah, you pretty much nailed everything. So yeah, we'll move on to a little bit about us. So we really do pride ourselves on the customer service here. The client support is fantastic. Ryan and I are on the sales side of the firm. We do our best just to make sure everyone knows what they're getting into when they are onboarded. But once they are, they can reach out to any of our support teams here. We have general support. We have a transfers team that deals with incoming funds and an investments team. They review the documents and correspond with the client as we're going through the review process. There can be a little bit of back and forth there for titling, other pertinent info we need in the applicable documents, but usually just takes about 4 business days at most to get that process taken care of. And we're very responsive as well and knowledgeable for sure. I mean, a lot of us here are CISP trained, certified in IRA services professional, meaning we can pretty much answer any question if you call in. Unless it involves providing advice. So yeah, we talked a little bit about the fees, but why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about how they work?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in regard to the fees, basically, flat fees, Some other companies charge, I think we alluded to this before a little bit. They charge on a sliding scale, basically. So the more you make, the more they take, in essence.
Yeah,
So ours is
exactly.
flat. I think we mentioned it before, but I'll just reiterate. It's $110 per quarter. That's the main fee to keep in mind. So again, not based on the asset value
Right.
or amount.
Exactly. Yeah, a few other fees here and there. Opening the account, $50, placing an investment, $50. All very straightforward. Again, if you look under client resources and forms on the website, the fee schedule is on the drop-down menu. So
Exactly.
look over everything. Ryan and I are here. If you're not a client yet and have questions about the fees, give us a call. You'll have our info on the next slide, I believe. So yeah, that's pretty clear. And industry knowledge. So this goes back to the client support and the customer service. You need to know what you're talking about, and we do take that very seriously. I myself have taken the CISP course. Ryan will soon. He's had to work here for a while to be able to qualify for that. But anyway, most of us are. And if you call in, we'll be able to help out, no problem. And again, just to reiterate, very responsive. Give us a call, shoot us an email. Either way, we'll get back to you very quickly.
If you are a current client, generally our support team is the best to contact. They're 845-947-1000. Then there's menu options in that regard. New clients, oncoming clients, that's me and Will. So
definitely, yeah. Thanks for mentioning that.
no problem.